everyone, I'm Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I'm in a different place today because my family's home and they're fucking loud. Anyway, I'm here today with the books that I read in December. This will be my last reading wrap-up of 2021. Sorry, my cats. They're very rude. I didn't do all the stats like I normally did. I just don't feel like it this time. But I will tell you that this month I read 5 horror books, 2 thrillers, 2 nonfiction, and a fantasy. I believe altogether that's 10 books. Which, honestly, very surprised because at one point in December it took me like 2 weeks to finish like 200 pages in a book. So here I am. Here's White Fang. She's probably my baddest, my worst cat, but also my best cat. Okay, enough about cats. I've got some books here. So first off, I'm going to tell you about a book that I did not finish this month. This is Eden by Tim Lebbon. This was an eco-horror book and I got more than 100 pages into it. Maybe like 130 or so, and I decided to quit because I started reading this at the end of November and I didn't get through it in November. And then it was like through the first week of December even, and I was like, I just really don't want to read this book. And so I decided to stop. It is about these zones that we've created all over the world to try to save the earth, basically. And we've let these specific areas just live without human interference. So they're all cleared out. There are no humans living there. They leave all the buildings though, which is kind of strange to me. But then humans aren't permitted to go in the zones. However, there are these groups of people who go in and kind of do like runs through them. And I'm not really sure why. Because it just seems so boring and weird. But that's just me, I guess. And maybe that's why I didn't like this, is because I don't know, I expected more in terms of what these teams were doing when they go into these virgin zones, and I didn't like the characters. There were so many of them right off the bat and it was hard to keep track of them. There is these characters, a couple characters who, they just have like one-track minds. It's like every time we get a glimpse from this character, they're always just repeating the same shit over and over, and it's like, I'm bored of this. I don't care. And so I decided to stop, which is a little disappointing, I guess, because I wanted to know what was going to happen, I guess, but not enough to like slog through. I mean, I read 100 and I'm pretty sure it was 139 pages. And nothing had fucking happened yet. And I can't do that. I don't know. I mean, maybe I could if I felt more connected to the characters or what was happening in their personal lives, but I didn't. Next, I'd like to briefly tell you about a book that I read that I will be giving more of an in-depth review separately about. This was Manhunt by Gretchen Felker-Martin. And this was a really wild dystopian, like post-apocalyptic story where the men in our world, or really just anybody who produces enough testosterone, that could be even like AFAB, people who have too much testosterone, who have like medical conditions. When they have enough testosterone in their bodies, they start to turn into these feral creatures who like are animalistic. Like they're in packs and they snarl and scream and weird things are happening to their bodies. It's really disgusting. The whole world is turned upside down, obviously. Predominantly there are women, but there are also trans women and some trans men. And yeah, so that's what I'm gonna tell you without going into too many details. I really liked this. You definitely keep an eye out. I should look up when this comes out. This comes out February 22nd, 2022. Next on my list is Christine by Stephen King. This is my first time reading Christine. This is about a couple friends. This is Arnie and I think Dennis, right? Yes, I read this at the beginning of the month. And Arnie is kind of, I don't know, he's just not very suave. He has trouble with the ladies in school. These are high school seniors. And he's very smart, and he's very kind to his friend Dennis. He also has a little bit of a rough relationship at home. His mother in particular is very demanding and kind of a helicopter parent before that term was coined. And so he has it a little bit rough, but he falls in love with this beat up car, and he buys it from this old man who says its name is Christine, and strange things start to happen with the car and Arnie. I guess this didn't quite go exactly as like I thought it would, in terms of what exactly was going on with Christine and Arnie. So I liked that, and like I liked the book. The book was good. At no point was I like, I don't really like this, I don't want to read it, but it wasn't the most spectacular of King's books, I don't think. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty run-of-the-mill, a spooky car and a spooky guy and some other spooky guys. So I don't know. I mean, it's just a normal King book, I guess. I also read Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer this month. This might be probably my favorite of the month, I think. This is a nonfiction, and this is about the, was it 1996? Yes, 1996 Everest disaster, where Jon Krakauer was part of a team, and there were also a couple other teams who were all trying to reach the summit of Mount Everest on the same day, because to reach the summit, you have a very narrow window of when you can do that, because the weather is obviously like not great. And this sneaky storm rolled up on them, and a lot of people were left exposed up at the summit, and many people died. Many people lost their lives, and it's just a really super sad story. It was really interesting. I could not put this down. I couldn't do it. I couldn't put it down. I think this is my favorite of Jon Krakauer's books so far. I've read 3 of them. I will say though, reading some other things about this, some people refute exactly what was going on, well, what Jon Krakauer said was going on. However, he is a journalist, and he, you know, flat out says in the beginning of the story that the conditions that your body are under when you're up that high, there are, you know, physiological things that happen with your brain and your body. And, you know, sometimes he was talking to someone who would insist that this happened, and then 6 months later he would talk to that same person and they insisted that this is what happened. And it's not that this person is lying, it's likely just that the lack of oxygen and the lack of eating, and your body just doesn't function right up there, and that really can lead to, you know, some problems with memory and things like that. So I haven't read any other account of this, but I did watch a couple like documentaries and things like that. It seems like it pretty much matched up to the events of the other things that I watched. But I would like to pick up, I know that at least 2 other people wrote about this, people who were on the expedition and survived wrote about this, so I'd like to take the time to read those as well. I also read this month Soul of the Sword by Julie Kagawa. I kept wanting to call it like Sword of the Soul or The Soul in the Sword, but it's Soul of the Sword. And this is the second book in a series. The first book is called Shadow of the Fox, and that's about a shrine. Well, she's not really a shrine guardian. She lives at a shrine. She's a kitsune, but that's kept kind of a secret. And a kitsune, well, she's half kitsune, so she's half fox demon, and that's kind of kept secret. The priests at the shrine don't want her to use her kitsune magic. They kind of shame her about it and stuff. But then one day this tragedy strikes and someone kills all the priests at the shrine. But before this happens, the priest gives her half of the scroll and says, you have to guard this, and tells her that she has to go to this other shrine to give it to the guardians and the priests there. So she goes off on this journey. She meets some people, including a demon slayer and he's a Ronin, right? So he was a samurai, but he's been disgraced, and she just makes these great friendships along the way, and I think that gets even better in this book. I really liked this. I think that if you like YA fantasy, this is a great one. It does have kind of the romance aspect, but it's not as heavy-handed as in some books. I like a good relationship in a fantasy book, but I don't like it where it's like insta love, you know? And I don't think that was the case with this. It's really a book where these two people meet and they don't necessarily like each other, but they grow a friendship, and out of that comes maybe you know, some softer feelings for each other. And I like that, and I like this. I thought it was a really great book, and I would really like to pick up the third book soon. All right, and for a winter horror book this month, I picked up The Visitor by Sergio Gomez. I had planned on reading another book, but I'll save that for a different month. I just really wanted to get this in because it was the shortest one and one that I knew I could for sure finish by the end of the month. And this didn't quite go as I thought it would, but I didn't think it was terrible. This is about a storm that hits, and there are some people who seek refuge in a roadside diner. Some of the people like live there. Obviously the man who runs the diner lives there, but there are also a couple people who are driving past and got stranded on the road, and then something terrible happens, and this alien creature attacks the people in this diner. I was expecting more like Fire in the Sky or Dark Skies or like E.T. even. But what this really is more like Predator to me, I think. More like a militaristic alien. So that was a little bit disappointing just because I don't know. I don't think that that's scary necessarily. I mean, a little bit, but I don't know. This wasn't as spooky as I really wanted it to be, but it was short and fast. It was visceral, and it got its point across, you know? Okay, next book is just gonna be very brief also, because this is a book I'm including in a trope video for next month. This is The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse, and this is about a old tuberculosis sanatorium. Well, I think they didn't just treat tuberculosis, actually, now that I think about it. It was an asylum and also a sanatorium, so there were people with illnesses, but also mental illnesses who got sent here in the past, and now it's been renovated and is a very fancy hotel who's tried to incorporate some of its past into its architecture and design and stuff. So it's kind of weird and morbid sounding. There is a main character who's there for a party, and one of the people in the party goes missing. And I will tell you more about this next month. All right, the second nonfiction book I read this month was this very hefty, dense story about Josef Mengele. This is Mengele, the Complete Story by Gerald L. Posner and John Ware. This wasn't exactly what I was expecting either, but I ended up enjoying this and where the story took me. I mean, it's not a story, this is what happened. And what I liked about this is that it does cover Josef Mengele's time before and during World War II, but the majority of this focuses on what happens after he escaped from Europe and went to South America, and what he did in South America. And so there is really some sad stuff about his time in Auschwitz and how he treated the prisoners there, but that's not the main focus, which made it honestly easier to get through because he was a terrible, terrible person who, you know, never really seemed to have any remorse for anything that happened. He thought that he justified it enough to where he thought he was doing what was best. And it's really terrible. He just never, ever, ever showed any guilt or remorse for what he did. So yeah, I mean, that's really all I can tell you about it. If you're looking for a World War II history book, I would definitely recommend this. It was a little bit dense, but it was well researched and had an interesting narrative to it, I suppose, where it wasn't too dry. Next up, Touch the Night by Max Booth III. This was, boy, such a wild story. This is about two friends, Josh and Alonzo. They're, I believe, like 11 or 12 years old, so they're not quite teenagers, but they're not quite kids, and they are out causing some trouble one night, and they actually physically hurt somebody. Then on their way home back to Alonzo's house, a police car stops, and the police end up abducting them, and the boys go missing. Of course, the next morning, the mothers are like, well, what happened? Where are our children? And one mother actually saw the police take the boys, but she, you know, expected it to be like, they'll be at the police station tomorrow morning, and, you know, maybe this will teach them a lesson. Of course, she doesn't know exactly what they did, but she's assuming that if the police picked them up, that they must have done something. But they go to find the boys, and the police have no record of anyone picking up these boys, and they certainly are not at the police station. And something smells really fishy, and the moms are going to get to the bottom of it. The police who pick Alonzo and Josh up seem a little bit inhuman, and their names are Father and Uncle, and the story gets really strange. It is gory and unsettling, and the end will keep you up at night. It was a great book. This is the book that took me a really long time to read, and not because I didn't want to read it, but just because I couldn't make myself read. So I was like, you know, I don't want to force myself to do it, because then I'm not having a good time. Despite this sitting for probably like 2 weeks at least, it was like, I knew when I read, I did want to read this. It's just that I couldn't read much of it at a time, and that wasn't the book's fault. And I think that's a little testament to how good the story is. I think that even though I was going through, even though my reading wasn't so great, when I did want to read, I did want to read this. All right, last book here is Her Pretty Face by Robyn Harding. This is a thriller. This is the first time I've read anything by Robyn Harding, but I do own, I believe, at least one other book by her, and she's put out quite a few by now. I think probably 4 or 5 books, and they all sound really good. So I was like, you know what, I should probably get to this, right? And I did enjoy this book. This is about a mother, oh boy, I forgot the names in this, Frances, and she has a son who has some issues at school, not so much being a troublemaker, but in kind of a social setting, he has some issues. And so she's really excited when he gets a place at this academy, a private school, that's a little bit more hoity-toity, but then Frances has a problem with fitting in with the other families, because in this community, while they have a secure home, they definitely don't, they aren't at the same socioeconomic status as some of the other families, and that causes some problems with her. She feels like she just doesn't fit in. But then she meets another mom named Kate, and Kate is so nice to her, and Kate has no problem basically telling those other moms to fuck off, you know, in nicer terms. So Frances really feels like she's found a friend, and Kate's son is friends with her son, and everything's going great until she finds out that Kate has a really terrible secret. I liked this, but I really felt like Kate's secret, while it was unsettling and disturbing, it was like a little bit, I don't know, I wouldn't say a letdown, but I guess the way that it was all exposed and stuff, it was like, okay, well, I kind of saw this happening, and then by the end it's like, okay, you know, there were some other reveals, and it's like, okay, I don't know, I guess I wasn't very wowed or surprised by them, but I still really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really fast-paced book. It was one that I didn't want to stop reading once I started it, but I don't know, like I said, the reveals, okay. But The rest of the book, I mean, the writing, I really liked the characters in this, and how it was set up was certainly mysterious, but then the reveals. So, I don't know. Not the best thriller I've ever read, but certainly an entertaining one. So, those are the 10 books I read at the end of the year. I'd love to hear what you guys read. If you read anything this month, I'm seriously thinking next year maybe I need to take like 2 weeks off of reading and just like cleanse my brain of reading in December. Or maybe just, you know, throughout the year, try to read a little bit less, because I definitely felt like I was piling a lot on myself. Anyway, I just want to say thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate every one of you. I will see you in 2022. What an exciting time. Hopefully this coming year treats us better than 2021 did. I will see you guys later. Thank you so much again for watching. Goodbye.